I wanted to come on and talk to you this week because it's running a little bit differently. As you can see here in this image, that this week we're only going to be doing one lesson, although it is a long one and an important one, so just to bear that in mind. The lesson is on describing polynomials in factored form. I've tried to bold here with this order of roots part, which I think is really important. Now, this is your first test, and I'm just going to talk through a little bit about how the tests work so that we're on the same page and we know how this is going to function. First of all, there is an assignment at the bottom of the page. I'll just quickly go and show you this. At the bottom of 1.7, there's what's called a consolidation activity. And I'm going to use this, and I'm going to count it as the application part of the test. It's not really a test. It's just going to fill in for that score. It's an assignment, and I'm going to make a separate video about that, so you can just click onto that. Like, there's a link to it that I'm going to make later. So the application is a little bit different. It's like its application test section is going to be that assignment at the bottom of the page. So it's at the end of Unit 7. You have to use GeoGebra or Desmos to create an image that matches a real-life image. So a lot like what you were sort of practicing in the first week, where I'd asked you, find a real-life example of a polynomial. Now, make sure you're choosing a degree 3 or degree 4 for that, right? Not a parabola. A parabola is not an advanced functions concept, right? It's something we've been studying for years already. So you want to make sure you choose an advanced functions type of function, i.e. a cubic or a quartic, ideally. You could go higher than that, but don't go lower. Now, tests. Let me talk about tests in general. First of all, I'm going to open the test on Wednesday, and it will stay open until the end of the week. So you don't have to do it at a specific time. You don't even have to do all 3 sections at a specific time. You can do the knowledge, and then you can do the thinking the next day, or it doesn't matter. I'll leave you to be responsible for how the best way for you to get it done. That's up to you, right? I mean, I know this is an online course. It's meant to be flexible. This is me trying to make sure that we maintain that flexibility even when we're taking a test. A test is very similar to the assignments that you're doing. There's only a couple of differences, right? We're only going to take them once. They count for a lot more. They're where we're really showing what we have learned. Like, the assignments are about practice, right? It's like we try it, we get it wrong, we go back, we look at it, we try to learn why was this true or why was this false. For a test, it's not really the same thing. I would say the questions are slightly easier than an assignment. Also, there will be, I know people have been asking me about the true or false and so on, and there will be part marks on the test. You'll get a mark for everything that you do correct, right? Whereas the assignment is a bit of a different philosophy, where I want you to get it perfect, because the point of the assignment is to master the concept to prepare you for the test, right? The test is more like, let's see what you know. So keep that in mind. It's worth a lot, right? I mean, it's worth a lot more than an assignment. So it's very good if you've been getting 100% on your assignments. That's a lot of people are. That's wonderful to see. Even if it takes 10 tries, it doesn't matter, remember? But the test is different. Now, let's just quickly go through the sections. First of all, the test is out of 30, okay? 9 will be knowledge, 9 will be application, 6 is communication, 6 is thinking. Each of those sections are their own quiz in D2L, right? So like I was saying, if you want to do knowledge on Wednesday, if you're on a roll, you go on and do communication. Or if you've got something else that comes up, you can do communication the next day. As long as you get it done in that window of time, there will be no issue. Now, knowledge, okay, is a strictly right or wrong section. So a lot of the questions are either multiple choice or they're true or false, again, with the caveat that you get each one you get right will count, so you can get part marks on those ones, and or like a calculation type of question. So maybe it'll be like a question, and then you'll have to put in a number as an answer. But the idea is, with knowledge, I'm just marking is it correct or not. So I'm not interested in the process. I'm not collecting any process, and whatever technique you want to use to get the answer, you are free to use. So you can use GeoGebra for anything you want. You can use Desmos for anything you want. It's no holds barred, right? Whatever it takes to get it right. Now, again, it is a test, so it has to be your work, right? Now, you know, it's not, you're not to be in communication with another person while you're doing this, right? Because remember, you know, to have any integrity as a course, this has to represent what you have learned, right? So you're free to search the internet, you're free to use GeoGebra, you just can't talk to another person, right, or get another person's help. Now, how it will work is there will be a 30-minute timer, and then once the timer expires, there is a 5-minute grace period before your test will shut down. Actually, your test doesn't actually shut down, but what it will do is it will stop saving. So if you are over the 30 minutes, that is your signal that, like, okay, I need to very quickly finish my last couple questions and submit, because so one thing I would say is you want to save it, right, the moment the timer runs out, just to make sure it's saved. But you will not be able to save it once the grace period expires. So once again, you have your 30 minutes, you get the test done in 30 minutes, you have 5-minute grace period after the timer expires before your test will stop accepting changes, at which point you'll be forced to submit whatever's done, okay, and that will be your score. Now, communication is a typing only. We have to use the equation editor for communication, okay, and I know this is new to you, and you know, I'm not going to be asking for huge long equations yet. I mean, we really haven't done anything that needs huge long equations yet, right? But the point is, we have to start practicing using this equation editor, because the exam is going to be done a lot on the equation editor. So I'm going to go through and explain how do you use it and so on here in a minute. This one, again, it is 6. So mainly just to talk about communication, I'm looking for you to explain a concept, maybe define a concept, maybe distinguish one thing from another, like what's the difference between, you know, a positive and a negative leading coefficient on a cubic, right? What would be the difference in end behavior or something like that. Of course, this is the first time we're doing it, so it's going to be quite slow, which is why a communication section is normally 20 minutes with a 5-minute grace period, because it's worth less, right? It's only 6 marks, so probably like, let's say 3 questions maybe worth 2 each, or maybe 2 questions worth 3 each, or something like that. But I'm going to give extra time for the equation editor. And actually, since this is the first time we're doing it, I'm going to give a little bit more, just because I want you to use the equation editor, but I don't want it to you know, prevent you from sharing what you know. So it is very important to give the equation editor a try. We haven't done like huge equations yet, so it's kind of limited, like what we're going to be able to do, but you know, I want to make sure that by the time we get to the exam, we're comfortable expressing our answers this way. Okay, so there will be 40 minutes total. So when you load up the quiz, you'll see that the timer is 35, but like knowledge, it will have a 5-minute grace period, and a lot of that time is I don't think you're going to need. I just want it to be there for you to be able to just, you know, if you have to tinker with the equation editor or whatever, that you know you have that time to be able to make sure you've got it the way you want it. Now for thinking, which is the last section, it is a 20-minute timer, but I'm going to give 5 extra minutes because you may have to attach a picture of your work or use the equation editor to show some support. And then there's a 5-minute grace period as well. So you'll load up thinking, it will have a 25-minute timer, but there'll be 5 minutes again before it stops saving. Okay, and whatever you can get done and handed in that time is what will count. Please don't email me after it closes. It's too late at that point, right? I mean, I can't accept things that are outside this window, and the tests are designed to be done in this sort of window. So again, before you start one, make sure you actually have half an hour of time where you know you're not going to be interrupted. So thinking, you can write on paper. You can submit like pictures of your paperwork. That's okay. It won't be that way for the exam, but it is that way for the test. So that's you know, whatever. It is what it is. You can also use GeoGebra to do a freehand graph, which when I say that, I'll just quickly load GeoGebra here and you can see what I mean. So of course I'm in a bit of a bind in terms of, can I accept GeoGebra's graphs for your work? So if the graph says something like, you know, if a question says draw a graph, you know, obviously I'm going to have to adapt how I answer a question like that because it's somewhat limited. But let's say I just said this. Let's say your question was something like, sketch what a degree 4 function with 3 intercepts and negative end behavior might look like. Now, in that situation, you could just draw it on GeoGebra, and it wouldn't matter that you typed it in, because of course, in order to know how to do this, right, it's not like I can just say to GeoGebra, draw me an upside down quartic that goes through 3 intercepts, right? It doesn't work that way. So I just wanted to share a couple of things here. So number one, it would be acceptable in this scenario to, let's say we were drawing that, right? We're going like x plus 3, x minus 2, x plus 1, and x plus 4. And then I've kind of got what I want. Of course, I don't really want to give it away here, right? I've kind of got what I want, right? It opens down, but it has too many intercepts, right? It has 1, 2, 3, 4. So maybe something in the lessons will help me figure out how to get it down to 3 instead. In any case, if you used your snipping tool, right, on Windows at least, right, this snipping tool, you could just make a net around this graph. Well, you know what? If you're going to make a net around it, let's make a net around it so that we can actually see the equation, because that'll help me evaluate it. So and then you could submit this as your graph, right? That would be fine. Now, if it specifically says to draw by hand, or or you don't want to use GeoGebra this way, I just wanted to show you another way that you could use it, which is rather than program a function the way I just did. What you could do instead is right here, okay, freehand shape. So when you go under freehand shape, what it will do is you can sketch. So I have an intercept, and then another intercept, and then another intercept, and then I could hand that in, right, as my graph. And maybe I want to draw an arrow and an arrow to show that it has the right end behavior, and then I go ahead and I can just copy that, and that can be my answer. Of course, you don't have to do this on GeoGebra. You can draw it on literally anything. I'm trying to think ahead for the exam again, because whatever you do on paper during the exam is not going to get handed in. It might be a good idea to just start experimenting with this. Doesn't have to be GeoGebra. If you use Whiteboard or a smart notebook or OneNote or whatever, where you can draw, that's good. And I'm not looking for diagrams that are super precise, right? I mean, obviously, I'm just looking that, when I say draw me a quartic with multiple x-intercepts that opens down, obviously everyone's is going to look quite different, and you're just going to draw, you draw it to make sure that you fulfill the conditions, right? I'm not looking for perfection here. Just something like what I have here is perfectly fine. Okay, so when I say freehand GeoGebra graph, that's what I'm talking about, right? You can draw a freehand shape. It doesn't have to be on GeoGebra. I just think it's useful to put it on GeoGebra because, of course, GeoGebra is good because you can scale it, right? Which you can't really do on other ones. Or you could compare it against, let's say, an actual quartic. So if I go x plus 4 and x plus 1 and x minus 1.5 and x minus, let's say, what does that look like? Maybe 3.6. And then I'll flip it over, and it's kind of okay, I kind of got, mine isn't that far off from something like this, right? I mean, it's why I think doing it on GeoGebra is good is because you still have the power of using all the other stuff on GeoGebra, right? But if all the question is asking is for you to draw something, you don't have to draw it on GeoGebra. Anyway, that's just my advice. So hopefully this just gives you an idea about how this week is going to go. Okay, so just to summarize, on Monday or Tuesday, I would suggest you go to Lesson 7. Now, Lesson 7 is pretty long, and it's also pretty important. So there's multiple sets of practice to do. There's also a guided tour. There's a whole bunch of stuff. There's a discussion that I think is worth doing, right? Because it gives you the chance to get some feedback. And then there's a self-reflection, as usual. I think I'll leave it up to you how many of those things you think you need to do to be prepared. At the end of Lesson 7, there's the polynomial assignment. I'm going to make a separate video for that, so we'll make that in a minute. And then the test. So one last time with the test. Knowledge, whatever you want, works. Communication and thinking, you have to show your work. Just giving me an answer is not going to work in that section because it's not what I'm looking for. In knowledge, you don't have to show me anything, right? However you get the answer is fine. All I'm marking is right or wrong. But in communication and thinking, I want to see the development. I want to see the process, right? So make sure you give me like what you were trying to accomplish and all that stuff, right? Not just the answer. Just the answer, if it's right, is maybe a 50. And if it's wrong, is probably a 0. So I need to see the, in the communication section, I need to see the reasoning behind why you think what you think. And in the thinking section, I need to see the plan. Okay, so I'm just trying to be clear with you what it is I'm expecting. And again, on the bright side, even if I don't get the question right, like in thinking, let's say, but my plan is good, like my plan is right even though my answer isn't right, I might still get the majority of the marks, like maybe 75 or maybe even 80 in that section because my plan was right. So that's why I put that emphasis on, showing the plan and not just, giving me an answer. Those sections are not for just answers. They are for a full, proper procedure. Okay, so knowledge is a quiz. Communication is a quiz with a lot of extra time to accommodate the equation editor because it's our first time using it. Thinking is a quiz with some extra time in order to post or write your equations or your pictures. And application is a little different for this one. It's more of an assignment that's just going to count as a test mark. So it's going to count for a bunch, right? But it's going to be something that you're going to submit to the Dropbox and so on. And I will explain like how that one's going to work in another video. Okay, so hopefully that clears it up for this week. Again, if you have any questions, please reach out. I would say it's important to reach out early in the week as opposed to later, right? Because you don't want to be asking me a question on Thursday or Friday when I'm not going to answer on the weekend, right? And then you're not starting your test until Sunday because you're waiting for me to answer on the weekend when I'm not going to. So if you do have a question, if there's anything here that isn't clear, let's make sure we try to get that out of the way earlier in the week so that if we do leave the test for the weekend, we know that we know exactly what we're doing. Okay? So that's going to do it for now.